Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. What if I told you that the very thing you've been taught to do more of, talk more, chase harder, explain yourself, prove your worth, is silently killing attraction? What if the power that makes women think about you when you're not around has nothing to do with looks, money, or clever lines, but with something far quieter, something most men completely overlook? You felt it before, the moment you pulled back, the moment you stopped reacting, the moment you chose calm over impulse. Suddenly the dynamic shifted, her tone changed, her curiosity grew, her attention returned stronger than before. That wasn't luck, that was silent power. Stoic men understood this centuries ago. Not silence as weakness, but silence as control, presence without performance, confidence without noise. When you master this, you stop chasing interest and start creating gravity. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly what this silent power is, why it works so deeply on female psychology, and how you can embody it naturally, without manipulation, games, or pretending to be someone you're not. Watch this video till the very end, because the final insight is what separates men who are temporarily attractive from men women can't stop thinking about. Number 1. Calm emotional control under pressure. There's a kind of power that doesn't announce itself, doesn't raise its voice, doesn't rush to correct or convince. You feel it when pressure enters the room and nothing in you scrambles. That's calm emotional control. And if you're honest, you know how rare it is. Most people leak emotion the moment something unsettles them. Their tone shifts, their pace changes, their need to regain balance becomes visible. When you learn to stay centered under pressure, you separate yourself instantly, not by force, but by gravity. The Stoics spoke about this relentlessly, though they used different words. Epictetus put it plainly, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That line gets repeated so often it loses its edge, but sit with it for a moment. If your reactions are automatic, predictable, and emotionally charged, you're easy to read, easy to pull, easy to unsettle. Calm emotional control removes that access point. You stop handing your nervous system over to external events. You stay with yourself. What makes this kind of control so compelling is that it's internal first. It's not silence as a tactic. It's not emotional suppression. It's regulation. You still feel everything, but you don't spill it everywhere. Wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength shows up when your breathing stays steady while others tense, when your expression doesn't change just because something unexpected occurs, when your inner world doesn't rush to restore comfort. Pressure reveals habits. Under stress, you either tighten or you soften. Most men tighten. They try to regain control by explaining, asserting, or withdrawing dramatically. Calm emotional control does neither. It stays open without being exposed, grounded without being rigid. And that balance is intoxicating because it signals depth. It suggests that your stability isn't fragile, that it doesn't depend on how things go. You build this by training your pause, not once, repeatedly. Every time you feel a surge of emotion, don't act immediately. Let the first wave pass. That urge to respond right now is the very thing that gives situations leverage over you. Seneca warned, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." Delay isn't weakness, it's mastery. When you delay, you choose your response instead of being chosen by it. Here's something to adopt immediately. Start noticing the micro moments when you feel pressured internally. The tightening in your chest, the rush of heat, the urge to speak or move. Instead of reacting, label it silently. Tension, urgency, discomfort. That simple act creates distance. You're no longer inside the emotion, you're observing it. And what you observe loses its ability to control you. Another habit that changes everything is breath discipline. When pressure rises, slow your exhale. Longer out-breaths signal safety to your nervous system. This isn't mystical, it's mechanical. And the calmer your body becomes, the clearer your mind follows. Reminded himself, keep your mind tranquil. Tranquility isn't passive, it's trained. You also need to let go of the belief that you must resolve emotional tension immediately. You don't. Some discomfort is meant to be felt, not fixed. When you allow pressure to exist without rushing to neutralize it, you demonstrate inner sufficiency. That's what draws people in. Not emotional fireworks, but emotional depth. Not reactivity, but restraint. Calm emotional control also means refusing to borrow emotions that aren't yours. If someone else is agitated, you don't need to mirror it. If someone else is testing, you don't need to prove anything. Epictetus said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. Read that again. Complicit. That means you always have a choice. The moment you stop taking the bait emotionally, the dynamic shifts. Now let's talk about practice, because insight without repetition fades fast. Each day, choose one moment to deliberately slow your response. Just one. It could be internal, it could be external. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to justify it. Just pause longer than feels comfortable. Let silence sit. Let your body settle. This is how you build emotional stamina. Another exercise, emotional fasting. Pick a short window of time and commit to not expressing irritation, defensiveness, or urgency, internally or externally. Feel it without narrating it. This trains you to separate feeling from action. Over time, you stop identifying with every emotional fluctuation. You become the container, not the content. There's also immense power in reducing emotional storytelling. When pressure arises, the mind wants to explain it, justify it, dramatize it. Don't. Strip it down to sensation. Sensation passes faster than stories. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." When you drop the narrative, the emotion loses its fuel. What happens next is subtle but profound. Your presence changes. You become harder to shake, not because you're guarded, but because you're grounded. You don't need to dominate situations. You don't need to withdraw from them either. You stay, fully, calmly, and that calm becomes a signal. It says you've been here before internally, that you trust yourself to handle pressure without unraveling. This is the silent power, not loud confidence, not emotional coldness, emotional command. It makes people lean in because it's rare. It makes interactions feel charged because there's space, not chaos. And it starts with a simple decision you make daily, to govern your inner world before reacting to the outer one. As wrote, be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved and the raging of the sea still falls around it. Become that rock, not by force but by practice. Slow your breath. Delay your reactions. Observe your emotions without obeying them. Do this consistently and your calm will speak louder than anything you could ever say. Number 2, detachment from outcomes and validation. Detachment from outcomes and validation is one of those ideas that sounds simple until you try to live it. Then you realize how deeply wired the opposite impulse is. You want reassurance. You want signs. You want certainty that what you're doing is landing, that you're valued, that you matter. And the Stoics would say this urge isn't a flaw, it's a habit. One that can be unlearned. One that, once released, changes the way you move through every interaction without you ever needing to announce it. When you detach from outcomes, you stop negotiating with the future. You stop leaning emotionally toward results you can't control. And that shift does something subtle but profound to your presence. You become lighter, less tense, less invested in how things should go. Put it plainly, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That strength isn't loud, it doesn't chase, it doesn't grasp, it simply stays where it is. Most men don't realize how often their energy is tangled up in expectation. They're waiting for a response, a reaction, a signal of approval. Even when they say nothing, their nervous system is reaching forward. That reaching is felt, not intellectually but instinctively. Detachment cuts that cord, not because you don't care, but because you refuse to make your internal stability dependent on something external. When you operate from that place, your attention turns inward. You begin asking better questions. Am I acting in line with my values? Am I grounded right now? Am I calm because I've chosen to be, or because I'm hopping for reassurance? Epictetus warned, if you are dependent on external things, you will never be free. Read that again, slowly. Dependence doesn't always look like desperation. Sometimes it looks like overthinking. Sometimes it looks like emotional monitoring. Sometimes it looks like subtle self-adjustment to maintain approval. Detachment is the antidote to all of it. It's the decision to let outcomes be what they are while you stay rooted in how you show up. This is where obsession is born, not from intensity but from absence of need. When you stop needing validation, your attention becomes selective. You're no longer scanning for confirmation. You're present, and presence has weight. It creates space. It invites curiosity because it doesn't demand anything in return. Seneca captured this beautifully when he said, "He who has learned to want little has reduced himself to very little need." Want little emotionally, need nothing externally. That's the posture. Now here's the part where you take action, because detachment isn't a mindset you repeat, it's a discipline you practice. Start with awareness. Notice how often your mood shifts based on imagined outcomes. Catch it in real time. When you feel anticipation tightening your chest, don't suppress it. Label it, that's expectation. When you feel disappointment forming before anything has even happened, name it. That's attachment. The moment you name these impulses, you create space between you and them. And space is where freedom lives. Next, train yourself to end actions internally. This is critical. Do what you do fully, then let it go. No mental replay, no emotional bargaining. Reminded himself, do what is necessary and accept what comes. Practice this with small things. Complete the action, close the mental loop. Move on. Each time you do, you reinforce the idea that your job is execution, not outcome management. You also need to wean yourself off validation loops. For the next 7 days, reduce one form of external checking, just one. Don't replace it with another. Sit with the discomfort. This discomfort is the withdrawal phase of dependency. It passes, and when it does, you'll notice something new. Your baseline calm rises. You're no longer emotionally outsourced. You're self-contained. Detachment also changes how you listen. When you're not seeking approval, you don't listen to respond or impress. You listen to understand. That alone shifts your energy from transactional to grounded. You're no longer trying to extract something. You're simply there. Stoicism teaches this kind of inner stillness. Epictetus advised, seek not that events should happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do. This isn't resignation. It's alignment with reality. Another powerful exercise is intentional non-reaction. Once a day, choose not to react where you normally would, not to punish, not to manipulate, simply to observe. Let the impulse rise and fall. This trains emotional sovereignty. Over time, you become less predictable, less reactive, and paradoxically more compelling, because nothing pulls you off center anymore. Here's the truth most people won't tell you. Obsession doesn't come from being needed. It comes from being unmoved. When your emotional state isn't for sale, people feel it. They sense that your approval isn't something they can earn through leverage, and that uncertainty draws attention. Not because you're withholding, but because you're whole. Detachment doesn't make you cold, it makes you clear. You still feel, you still care, you just don't cling. Seneca wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." Live there, right now, this moment, not in anticipation, not in fear, right here. Commit to this practice daily. Detach from outcomes. Release validation. Anchor yourself internally. Let your calm become your signature. And remember, when you stop chasing certainty, you become it. Number 3, quiet confidence without explanation. There's a kind of power that doesn't move toward anyone, yet somehow pulls. It doesn't ask to be noticed, and that's exactly why it is. Quiet confidence without explanation isn't about withholding, it's about wholeness. You're not silent because you're unsure. You're silent because there's nothing you feel compelled to justify. And that changes the way you're felt in a room, even before a word is spoken. Most people explain themselves too much because they're negotiating their worth in real time. You've probably felt that pressure before, the urge to clarify, to soften, to prove, to make sure you're being read correctly. But every explanation carries a hidden message. I need you to understand me so I can feel steady. Quiet confidence sends the opposite signal. It says, I'm already steady. And that steadiness creates gravity. The Stoics understood this deeply. Wrote, be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it. Read that again. Notice what's missing. No counterattack, no justification, no performance, just presence. When you operate from that place, curiosity replaces certainty in others, and curiosity is far more powerful than persuasion. You don't need to announce who you are when your behavior already does it. You don't need to defend your choices when you're at peace with them. And you definitely don't need to narrate your value. The more you explain, the more you dilute. The more you trust silence, the more weight your words carry when you finally use them. This kind of confidence is quiet because it doesn't rush. It doesn't scramble to correct assumptions. It lets people sit with their interpretations. Seneca warned, he who explains himself too much is often hiding something. Sometimes what's being hidden isn't a flaw, but fear. Fear of being misjudged, fear of being misunderstood, fear of losing control of the narrative. Quiet confidence lets go of that control, and paradoxically, that's what makes it feel so commanding. If you want to build this, you start internally, not socially. You begin by closing the gap between what you think, what you feel, and what you do. When those three are aligned, explanation becomes unnecessary. Epictetus put it simply, if you want to be invincible, make sure nothing outside your own will can disturb you. When your sense of self is internal, you stop reacting to external pressure. You stop filling silence out of discomfort. You stop managing impressions. Here's something to practice immediately. The next time you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause. Don't suppress the urge, observe it. Ask yourself one question, what am I trying to protect right now? Often the answer will surprise you. Sit with that answer. Let the moment pass without adding words. Each time you do this, you train your nervous system to tolerate ambiguity. And ambiguity is where quiet confidence lives. Another habit to adopt is deliberate brevity. Say less than you normally would, but mean it more. Not in a performative way, in a grounded way. Let your sentences land and end. Don't rush to fill the space after. Silence isn't empty, it's charged. Most people talk to relieve tension. When you don't, others feel it. They lean in, not because you're withholding, but because your presence feels resolved. This isn't about being cold or distant. Quiet confidence is warm, but it doesn't chase. It listens without needing to respond immediately. It observes without needing to label. It allows moments to breathe. Reminded himself, you don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. Apply that to your interactions. Not everything requires commentary. Not every pause needs filling. When you stop turning moments into performances, you start becoming memorable. You should also train yourself to be misunderstood without correcting it. This is difficult. It feels counterintuitive, but it's essential. When you rush to clarify, you reveal dependency on perception. When you let misunderstanding exist, you demonstrate self-trust. Seneca wrote, "The wise man is content with himself." Contentment looks like composure under misinterpretation. It looks like not scrambling to realign how you're seen. A practical exercise here is what you might call non-intervention. For 1 week, don't correct minor of your intent. Let them exist. Notice that nothing collapses. Notice that your sense of self remains intact. This builds an internal muscle most men never train. And once it's strong, explanation feels optional rather than compulsory. Another exercise is stillness. 5 minutes a day. No input, no output, just sit. Thoughts will arise telling you to act, to speak, to do something productive. Don't follow them. Let them pass. This is Stoic discipline in action. You're learning that you don't have to respond to every internal impulse. And when you master that internally, it shows externally. Quiet confidence without explanation also changes how you move. Your gestures slow down. Your reactions soften. Your attention sharpens. You're not scanning for approval anymore. You're present, and presence is rare. When you're present, others feel seen without you having to say much at all. Remember this, obsession doesn't come from being obvious. It comes from being unresolved in the right way, not chaotic, centered, not distant, contained. When your confidence is quiet, people project depth onto you. When you explain less, they think more. When you don't rush to define yourself, you become something they want to understand. This isn't a trick, it's a discipline, a way of being, a daily choice to trust your own center more than external validation. Wrote, look within. Within is the fountain of good. Go there often, build from there. And then let your silence speak, not because you're hiding, but because you no longer need to prove anything at all. Number 4, strong boundaries expressed without force. There's a kind of strength that doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't negotiate its worth. It simply is. And when you understand this, when you start living from this place, something subtle but undeniable happens. You stop being pulled, tested, or bent out of shape. Not because you're rigid, but because you're clear. Strong boundaries expressed without force don't repel. They concentrate. They draw attention inward. They create gravity. Most people misunderstand boundaries. They think boundaries are walls, ultimatums, sharp words delivered at the right moment. That's force. And force always leaks insecurity. Real boundaries don't need enforcement because they're not reactions. They're standards, quiet ones, internal ones. You don't announce them. You don't defend them. You act in alignment with them and let the world adjust or not. As Epictetus put it, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. That single line captures everything. When your boundaries are embodied, not verbalized, they stop being negotiable. You feel this shift first inside yourself. You stop tolerating what drains you, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. You don't argue your limits into existence. You live them, and that changes your energy. You're no longer bracing for oversteps or rehearsing responses in your head. You're relaxed, grounded, present. That calm presence is the silent power most people can't look away from, because it signals something rare, inner order. Reminded himself, you always own the option of having no opinion. Read that again. Boundaries without force often look like non-engagement, like restraint, like choosing not to react. When you stop reacting, you stop feeding chaos. And when chaos gets no energy, it withers. You don't need to push back. You simply don't move. Your stillness does the work. This is where obsession is born, not from chasing, not from intensity, but from unresolved tension. When your boundaries are calm and unshakable, they create a question mark in the other person's mind. Not confusion, curiosity. You're not available in the ways they expect. You're present but not porous. Open but not exposed. That balance is rare, and rarity pulls focus. But let's be honest. This requires discipline. You can't fake this. If your boundaries are performative, they collapse under pressure. Seneca warned, "He who is brave is free." Bravery here isn't confrontation. It's the courage to disappoint. The courage to let someone feel friction without rushing in to smooth it over. The courage to sit with the discomfort of not being liked in every moment. When you develop that courage, your boundaries stop needing words. You start noticing how often you overexplain, how often you soften your no, how often you betray your own limits just to keep things comfortable. That's where your work is, not out there, in here. Strong boundaries are an inside job. They begin the moment you decide that your peace is not a bargaining chip. Here, something you can practice immediately. For the next few days, pay attention to your internal yes and no, not the words, the feeling. When something doesn't sit right, don't override it, don't justify it, just notice it. That awareness alone sharpens your boundaries. Another exercise, shorten your responses. You don't need to add reasons, tone modifiers, or emotional cushioning. Let your words be clean. Let silence handle the rest. Silence is a boundary too. There's a misconception that boundaries create distance. Weak boundaries do. Strong ones create safety. When you're clear with yourself, you become predictable in the best way, consistent, stable, and stability is intoxicating because it's scarce. Most people are fragmented, reactive, pulled by impulse. When you're not, you stand out without trying. Wrote, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. That's boundary language at its no drama, no justification, just alignment. When your actions match your values, your presence becomes coherent. People feel that coherence even if they can't name it, and what they can't name, they think about. Now let's talk about force, because force is often a compensation for fear. Force says, respect me. Calm boundaries say nothing and get respect anyway. When you stop forcing outcomes, you stop revealing need. And when need disappears, interest deepens. Not because you're withholding, but because you're whole. Adopt this mindset. You don't need to manage reactions. You need to manage alignment. If something crosses your internal line, you adjust your behavior. That's it. No speeches, no emotional charge, just adjustment. Over time, this trains everyone around you how to engage with you or not. And either way, you stay centered. Another practice worth committing to is what the Stoics called anticipating discomfort. Not to worry, but to prepare. Imagine moments where your boundaries are tested, not with anger, with calm refusal. Visualize yourself staying composed. This mental rehearsal strengthens your nervous system. When the moment arrives, you won't need force. You'll already be grounded. Strong boundaries expressed without force also mean you don't chase closure. You don't need to win the last word. You don't need acknowledgement. You're complete without resolution. That alone sets you apart. Seneca said, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Don't suffer imagined losses. Don't cling to outcomes. Let your boundary be enough. As you integrate this, something subtle happens. You stop broadcasting availability. You become selective without being cold. You're warm but not accessible to everything. That contrast creates intrigue. People lean in when they sense depth they haven't reached yet, and depth comes from limits. So take action. Today, decide where you've been too flexible. Decide what you will no longer negotiate. Then stop talking about it and start living it. Let your behavior communicate what your words never could. As reminded us, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. In other words, stay sovereign. This is the silent power. No force, no performance, just boundaries so solid they don't need defending. And once you live this way, you'll feel it, the shift. Not just in how others respond to you, but in how you carry yourself. Calm, centered, unmoved, and unmistakably compelling. Number 5, comfortable silence that creates tension. There's a reason silence unsettles people. Most aren't trained to sit inside it without scrambling to fill the space. Words become a shield, noise becomes a strategy, and when you don't reach for either, something subtle happens. You take control of the emotional tempo without lifting a finger. Comfortable silence isn't emptiness, it's pressure, it's presence. It's the quiet signal that you're not anxious for approval, stimulation, or reassurance. And when you embody that, the atmosphere shifts. You've been conditioned to believe value is proven through performance. Say the right thing, be entertaining, keep momentum alive at all costs. But the Stoics saw through that illusion centuries ago. Wrote, "Let your strength be quiet, not hidden, quiet." Because real power doesn't announce itself. It allows others to feel it instead. Silence does that better than any sentence ever could. When you're comfortable with silence, you stop chasing connection and start allowing it. That's where tension is born, not the anxious kind, but the charged kind. The kind that pulls attention inward. Silence creates space, and space invites projection. When you don't rush to define the moment, the other mind starts working for you, filling gaps, wondering, leaning forward internally. That's not manipulation, that's restraint. And restraint is rare. Most men talk themselves out of intrigue without realizing it. They explain too much, react too fast, smooth over every pause like it's a mistake. But silence isn't a mistake, it's a mirror. And if you're steady enough to hold it, it reflects confidence back at you. Epictetus put it plainly, "Nature has given us one tongue and two ears, so we may hear twice as much as we speak." Read that again. Silence isn't absence, it's discipline. Here's the deeper truth you need to accept if you want this power. Silence only works when it's genuine. Forced silence reeks of strategy. Awkward silence begs to be rescued. But comfortable silence, that comes from internal calm, from not needing to manage impressions in real time, from trusting that you don't need to add anything to be enough in the moment. So this becomes an internal practice before it ever becomes a social one. You have to train yourself to stop reacting to the discomfort of stillness. Start noticing how often you speak just to relieve tension inside yourself. That's the habit to break. Seneca warned, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Silence often feels dangerous because your mind fills it with imagined consequences. Disapproval, boredom, loss of interest. But those are stories, not facts. And every time you stay silent and nothing collapses, your nervous system learns a new rule. Stillness is safe. You should start practicing silence when nothing is at stake. Build the muscle privately. Sit without stimulation for 10 minutes a day. No phone, no music, no mental rehearsal. Just sit and let thoughts pass without chasing them. This is Stoic training at its core. You're learning not to obey every impulse to fill space. Over time, that calm bleeds into how you move, how you speak, how long you pause before responding. And those pauses matter more than you think. Another habit to adopt immediately is slowing your response time. Not dramatically, just enough to feel the urge to reply and resist it for a moment. Let that beat hang. Let your words arrive because they're chosen, not because they're demanded by silence. Reminded himself, you always own the option of having no opinion. Silence is often the highest quality option available. Use it. Comfortable silence also communicates selectivity. You're not trying to impress. You're not filling air to stay relevant. You're present, but not performing. That creates tension because attention is no longer spoon-fed. It has to be earned. And what's earned is always valued more than what's given freely. This doesn't mean withdrawing or becoming cold. Stoic calm isn't detachment, it's control. You're not withholding, you're choosing. There's a difference. When you speak less, your words carry more weight. When you don't rush emotional reactions, others start watching you more closely, trying to read you. That curiosity is the beginning of obsession, not because you're mysterious by design, but because you're grounded enough not to leak everything outward. Here's another exercise to sharpen this. For the next week, remove filler responses. No verbal padding, no automatic reassurance. Say less but mean it more. Notice how your body wants to jump in and rescue moments. Don't. Let silence stretch slightly past what feels comfortable. That edge, that mild internal tension is where growth happens. You'll also want to work on eye stillness. When you're silent, don't fidget. Don't look away to escape the moment. Stay relaxed. Stillness amplifies silence. It turns it from absence into gravity. Seneca wrote, "He who knows how to suffer need not fear what he can avoid." The suffering here is discomfort. Sit inside it long enough and it dissolves. Understand this too. Silence reveals more than speech ever could. It shows whether someone can sit with themselves, whether they need constant stimulation to feel alive. When you're comfortable in silence, you signal depth. And depth pulls people in because it promises something beyond surface-level exchange. This isn't about tricks, it's about self-mastery, about no longer being pushed around by the urge to fill every gap. When you reclaim silence, you reclaim your pace. And when you control the pace, you control the emotional tone without force. So take this seriously. Practice daily. Strip away unnecessary words. Train stillness. Let silence become a place you're at home in. Because when you're at home in silence, others feel it, and they don't forget it. As wrote, "Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it." Let silence be that cliff. Calm, unmoved, unrushed. That's the silent power. Number 6. Self-respect over people-pleasing. There's a kind of strength that doesn't need to be announced, defended, or dressed up to be convincing. You feel it the moment you stop betraying yourself to be liked. Self-respect over people-pleasing isn't loud. It doesn't posture. It doesn't chase reactions. It simply is. And once you choose it, truly choose it, you'll notice how differently you move through every interaction. You're no longer negotiating your worth in real time. You're no longer scanning faces for approval. You're standing on something solid, and that solidity changes how you're perceived without you saying a word. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus said, "If you want to be respected by others, the great thing is to respect yourself." Read that again. Not admired, not desired, respected. Because respect is the foundation everything else rests on. When you prioritize self-respect, you stop bending your boundaries for comfort. You stop offering more than is asked in hopes of securing connection. You stop explaining yourself just to avoid tension. And in that restraint, something powerful happens. You become unpredictable in the best possible way. Not erratic, not cold, just no longer programmable. People-pleasing feels harmless on the surface. It disguises itself as kindness, flexibility, generosity. But beneath it is fear, fear of disapproval, fear of loss, fear of standing alone in your own choices. And fear is readable. It seeps into tone, timing, posture, and decisions. Warn, the tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say or do, only what you do. That tranquility is the silent power. When you stop managing perceptions, you start radiating composure. And composure is magnetic. Here's the uncomfortable truth you need to face if you want to grow. Every time you abandon your standards to keep the peace, you weaken your presence. Not because others punish you consciously, but because they sense the imbalance. Self-respect communicates that your inner world is governed, that your values are not up for auction, that you won't trade alignment for approval. This doesn't make you rigid, it makes you clear, and clarity is rare. Now let's shift from understanding to action, because insight without practice is just another form of avoidance. Today, begin noticing where you say yes while your body quietly says no. Don't judge it, just notice it. Awareness is the first act of self-respect. Seneca wrote, "He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary." People-pleasing is preemptive suffering. You're paying an emotional cost in advance for a rejection that hasn't even happened. Stop doing that. Let silence exist. Let others adjust. Let discomfort pass without rushing to resolve it. Self-respect also changes how you listen. You stop listening to reply. You stop listening to agree. You listen to understand, and then you decide. That pause, small but deliberate, is powerful. It signals that your responses are choices, not reflexes. Practice this. When asked for something, don't answer immediately. Take a breath, feel your footing, then speak. Even a moment of delay rewires your nervous system away from urgency and toward authority. Another habit to build is internal consistency. Decide who you are when no one is reacting. Decide what you tolerate, decide what you don't. Then live as if those decisions matter, because they do. Reminded himself, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. You don't earn self-respect by convincing others. You earn it by honoring your own word to yourself, especially when it's inconvenient. You should also train yourself to detach from outcomes. People-pleasing clings to results. Self-respect commits to conduct. Focus on how you show up, not how it's received. When you do this consistently, something subtle but profound shifts. You become steady, and steadiness creates emotional gravity. Others feel it even if they can't articulate why. Here's a practical exercise to anchor this mindset. For the next 7 days, remove one compensatory behavior, just one. Stop filling silence. Stop overgiving. Stop softening statements to avoid reaction. Let the raw version exist. Observe how nothing collapses. Another exercise, write down 3 personal standards you will no longer negotiate. Not demands, not expectations of others. Standards for your behavior. Read them daily. Align your actions to them. This builds an internal spine. Stoicism teaches that freedom begins internally. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Self-respect is self-mastery in action. It's choosing long-term alignment over short-term comfort. It's trusting that what's meant to remain will not require you to shrink. And what leaves because you stood firm was never aligned with your growth anyway. You don't need to withdraw. You don't need to harden. You simply need to stop leaking self-worth. Speak less when words are unnecessary. Offer less when effort is unearned. Stand still when the urge to chase appears. This isn't indifference, it's discipline. And discipline, practiced quietly, becomes presence. That presence is what lingers. It's what occupies space without trying to. It's what turns restraint into intrigue and self-respect into silent power. As wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Build that retreat, live from it, and let everything else respond naturally. Number 7, consistent actions, minimal words. There's a reason silence paired with follow-through feels heavier than 1,000 promises. You already sense it. You felt the difference between words that float away and actions that land and stay. This is the quiet power most men overlook because it doesn't feed the ego immediately. But it works, relentlessly. When your behavior is steady and your mouth stays disciplined, you stop performing and start being. And that shift changes how you're perceived at a level deeper than logic. The Stoics were uncompromising about this. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." Read that again. Not describe it, not justify it, live it. Consistent actions with minimal words tell the world, and more importantly, tell you that you are aligned. You don't need to convince. You don't need to narrate your intentions. You move, you decide, you follow through. Over time, that consistency creates tension, the good kind. The kind that keeps people mentally engaged because they can't poke holes in your character. Most men talk too much when they're unsure. They clarify, promise, reassure, signal. And the more they signal, the less weight their presence carries. When you reduce your words, you remove noise. What's left is pattern, rhythm, predictability in conduct, not in emotion. That's what builds trust without effort and fascination without theatrics. You're no longer selling a version of yourself. You're letting repetition do the work. Reminded himself, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Minimal words force you into this discipline. When you stop explaining yourself, you're confronted with a simple question every day. Are your actions enough on their own? If they are, you relax. If they aren't, you adjust your behavior instead of your speech. That's where growth accelerates. Here, where you need to act deliberately, start by cutting unnecessary commentary from your life. Not silence as a tactic, but silence as hygiene. You don't need to announce plans. You don't need to preempt reactions. Let outcomes speak. This will feel uncomfortable at first because you're used to cushioning perception. Don't. Let your nervous system learn that it can survive without constant output. That calm will show up in how you move, how you pause, how you look at people when you listen instead of preparing to respond. Consistency is the second half of this power, and it's non-negotiable. Inconsistency destroys mystery. It creates confusion, and confusion invites testing. When your actions are steady, people stop trying to figure you out and start leaning in. Not because you're unpredictable, but because you're reliable in a way that feels rare. Seneca wrote, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Translation: stop overreacting, stop trying to manage every moment. Do what you said you would do, again and again and again. You build this muscle through small, boring discipline. Decide once, act fully. Don't renegotiate internally every time discomfort appears. That inner negotiation is what leaks outward as inconsistency. Instead, practice closing loops. Finish what you start. Keep promises you make to yourself first. When you do this, you begin to trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, you don't rush to explain anything to anyone else. There's also something subtle happening here psychologically. Minimal words create space. Space allows projection. When you're not constantly filling the air, others fill it for you, with curiosity, interpretation, attention. Not because you're manipulating silence, but because humans are wired to seek meaning. You don't have to engineer this. You just have to stop interrupting it. Try this exercise for the next 7 days. Speak 20% less than usual. Not cold, not withdrawn, just trimmed. Remove filler, remove justification. Say what's necessary, then stop. Notice how often you feel the urge to add one more sentence. Each time you resist that urge, you're strengthening restraint. Another exercise: choose one daily action that reinforces your identity and perform it at the same time every day. No announcement, no variation, just quiet repetition. This builds internal gravity. You start to feel solid. Others feel it too. Epictetus also said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." Notice the order. Identity first, action second. Words aren't even mentioned. That's not an accident. When your actions match your internal standard, you stop chasing reactions. You stop measuring yourself through response. That independence is felt instantly, even if it's never consciously named. Don't confuse this with emotional distance. You can be warm, attentive, present without being verbose. In fact, presence deepens when you're not busy talking. Listening becomes sharper. Your responses become fewer but more precise. And precision carries weight. Every word lands harder because it's rare. This is not a trick, it's a lifestyle adjustment, one that requires patience, but the payoff compounds. Over weeks, then months, you'll notice something shift. You're less reactive, less drained, more centered. And the attention you receive feels different, less conditional, less demanding, more focused. So take this seriously. Strip away excess language. Commit to consistency like it's non-negotiable. Let your actions stack quietly. As wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Dye yours with discipline, restraint, and follow-through. Then let the silence do what it's always done best: speak for you. Number 8, unshakable inner purpose. There's a kind of gravity that doesn't come from charisma, looks, or clever words. You feel it before anything is said. It's steady, grounded, untouchable, and it comes from one place only: unshakable inner purpose. Not the loud, announced kind, not the kind that needs to be justified. The quiet kind that lives inside you and orders everything else around it. When you have that, something changes in how you move through the world. You stop drifting. You stop adjusting yourself to be more palatable. You stop negotiating your direction based on reactions. And without trying, you become difficult to ignore. Most people live from the outside in. Their mood follows attention. Their confidence rises and falls with feedback. Their sense of meaning depends on being wanted. You felt that pull before, the subtle urge to bend, to soften, to overgive, to chase. Inner purpose ends that cycle, not through force but through replacement. When your life is organized around something larger than approval, you don't need obsession, you create it. Because obsession grows in the presence of something that doesn't need to be held onto. The Stoics understood this deeply. Wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." Inner purpose corrects that estimate. It teaches you what actually matters. When your direction is clear, distractions lose their power. Manipulation has no leverage. Emotional tests fall flat. You're not aloof. You're simply unavailable to anything that tries to pull you off your path. Here's the truth you need to sit with. Obsession is not created by pursuit. It's created by contrast. When someone senses that your life is already full, internally full, not busy, they feel the difference immediately. You're not trying to escape emptiness. You're moving towards something. And movement toward a chosen aim is intoxicating because it signals certainty. Not certainty about outcomes, but certainty about self. Unshakable purpose doesn't mean rigidity. It means priority. It means you know what comes first and you don't betray it for comfort or validation. Seneca warned, "If a man knows not which port he sails, no wind is favorable." Read that again. Without a port, every interaction becomes a negotiation. With one, interactions become optional. That shift alone rewires how you're perceived, and more importantly, how you experience yourself. You don't find inner purpose by waiting for clarity. You build it through commitment. Decide what you are moving toward, then act as if it matters before it feels inspiring. Purpose strengthens through use. Each day you honor it, it becomes harder to shake. Each day you abandon it, you teach yourself to be malleable. And malleability kills attraction at the root. Start small, but start today. Choose one non-negotiable daily action that aligns with who you are becoming. Not what impresses, not what gets attention, what sharpens you. Do it whether you feel like it or not, especially when you don't. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." Purpose isn't discovered, it's declared, then defended through repetition. You'll notice something uncomfortable at first. When you stop orienting your energy outward, silence appears. Gaps appear. Moments where you would have reached for reassurance or distraction. Let them exist. That space is where your center forms. Sit with it. Don't rush to fill it. Stillness is not stagnation, it's consolidation. Another habit to build is internal alignment checks. Several times a day, pause and ask yourself a simple question. Is what I'm doing right now serving my direction or avoiding discomfort? Answer honestly. No self-judgment, just awareness. Over time, this trains you to act from intention instead of impulse. And intention has weight. People feel it even when they can't explain why. Unshakable inner purpose also means emotional containment. You feel deeply, but you don't leak urgency. You don't outsource your sense of meaning to reactions. Reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That strength is what makes you magnetic. Not excitement, not intensity, strength. Here's a practical exercise that will change how you show up. Write down the one thing you are unwilling to compromise for comfort, just one. Then structure your week so that it's protected. No explanations, no negotiations, guard it quietly. Another exercise, practice delayed gratification in small ways. Pause before responding. Pause before reacting. Pause before adjusting yourself. Each pause reinforces your internal authority. Understand this. Obsession isn't about making someone chase you. It's about making them feel that you are already moving forward, inward, upward. You don't need to withhold. You don't need to perform. You need to be anchored. When you are, your presence carries direction. And direction is rare in a world addicted to distraction. Unshakable purpose also frees you from outcome dependence. You're not trying to get something to complete you. You're inviting others into a life that already has momentum. Seneca said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." When your why is solid, your how becomes calm. And calm has a way of pulling attention toward it without asking. This is not about becoming distant, it's about becoming whole. When your purpose is clear, you give freely without attachment. You engage without anxiety. You walk away without resentment. That emotional cleanliness is felt immediately. It's disarming, it's grounding, it lingers. So take this seriously. Strip your life down to what matters. Choose your direction. Act in alignment even when no one is watching, especially then. Let your purpose harden quietly. Over time, you won't need to be noticed. You'll be felt. And that silent power, the kind that doesn't chase, doesn't prove, doesn't bend, is what creates obsession without ever trying to. Number 9, mystery created by restraint. There's a kind of power that grows when you stop reaching for attention and let space do the work for you. You feel it the moment you decide not to fill every silence, not to explain every thought, not to reveal every layer of yourself just because you can. That space, clean, intentional, and calm, is where mystery is born. And mystery, when it's created by restraint rather than performance, has weight. It pulls instead of pushes. It invites curiosity without asking for it. You don't manufacture it. You allow it. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." Mystery exists only where there is something left undisclosed, something not handed over too quickly. When you restrain yourself, your words, your emotions, your availability, you give others room to wonder. And wondering is far more powerful than knowing. Obsession doesn't come from being fully seen. It comes from sensing depth without being able to immediately measure it. Most people rush to be understood. They narrate themselves constantly, hoping clarity will create connection. But restraint flips that script. When you stop explaining yourself, when you let your actions remain unannotated, you signal confidence in your own center. You're not anxious about being misread. You trust that what matters will reveal itself in time. Wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In the same spirit, the strongest presence is unlike the noisy, overexposed world around it. Quiet becomes contrast. Stillness becomes signal. This is where you need to act differently, starting now. Begin by noticing how often you volunteer information that wasn't asked for. Not because it's wrong, but because it's unnecessary. Each time you withhold that extra detail, you reclaim a bit of your gravity. Restraint isn't hiding. It's choosing timing. It's knowing that depth revealed slowly feels deeper than depth revealed all at once. You don't owe access to your inner world on demand. Mystery created by restraint also means emotional discipline. You don't broadcast every reaction. You don't rush to label every feeling. You let emotions rise and fall without immediately turning them into words. Seneca warned, "He who indulges anger holds himself cheap." The same applies to any unfiltered emotional display. When you restrain expression, you're not suppressing, you're mastering. And mastery is compelling because it's rare. It suggests there's more beneath the surface than what's currently visible. Adopt this habit deliberately. Pause before responding. Even a brief pause changes everything. It shifts you from reactive to intentional. It tells your nervous system that you're not under threat, that you don't need to hurry. Over time, that pause becomes part of your presence. People feel it. They sense that you're not easily pulled, not easily rattled. And what can't be easily pulled becomes fascinating. Another habit to build is selective disclosure, not secrecy, selectivity. You decide what gets shared and when based on alignment rather than impulse. Ask yourself before speaking, does this add clarity or does it dilute intrigue? Often, saying less sharpens the moment. Reminded himself, let your speech be better than silence or be silent. Silence isn't emptiness, it's space. And space invites imagination. You also need to restrain your availability. This doesn't mean withdrawing from life or playing games. It means structuring your time around your values, not around constant responsiveness. When you're not always immediately accessible, you communicate that your life has shape and direction, that you are engaged with something beyond the interaction at hand. Obsession grows when someone senses that your world is full, ordered, and not easily interrupted. Here's a practical exercise to train this. For the next week, reduce unnecessary responsiveness. Not in a dramatic way, just stop reacting instantly. Let messages wait. Let moments breathe. Notice how uncomfortable it feels at first, and then notice how that discomfort fades. That fading is you reclaiming autonomy. Another exercise, practice intentional silence in conversation. Not awkward silence, calm silence. Let it sit. Watch how the dynamic shifts without you doing anything at all. Restraint also applies to self-presentation. You don't need to signal everything you are or everything you're capable of. Let consistency do that work over time. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." The same principle applies here. Mystery deepens when your behavior aligns quietly with your values, without commentary. People are drawn to coherence they can't immediately decode. What you're really cultivating is inner containment, a sense that your energy is held, not leaking outward in search of validation. When your energy is contained, it intensifies. It becomes noticeable. You don't chase attention, attention orbits. This isn't about manipulation. It's about self-respect. When you value your own inner world enough to protect it, others sense that value instinctively. There's also a spiritual dimension to this. Stoicism teaches that much of life is outside your control. Restraint is your response to that reality. You focus on what is yours, your conduct, your choices, your pace. Wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Mystery is a byproduct of that strength. It emerges naturally when you're not trying to manage perception, only integrity. Make this your daily practice. Speak with intention, not compulsion. Move with purpose, not urgency. Share selectively, not reflexively. Sit with silence without rushing to fill it. Each of these habits reinforces the same message to yourself and to others, that you are grounded. And grounded men don't need to perform. They don't need to convince. They simply are. In time, restraint becomes effortless. Not because you're withholding, but because you're full. And fullness doesn't spill. It radiates quietly. That quiet is what draws people in, keeps them thinking, keeps them wondering. Mystery created by restraint isn't something you put on. It's something that remains when you stop giving everything away. Number 10, presence that makes others lean in. There's a kind of presence that doesn't try to be noticed, yet somehow becomes the center of gravity in any space. You've felt it before. It's not volume, it's not charisma tricks, it's not intensity, it's depth. And the moment you stop chasing attention and start inhabiting yourself fully, something shifts. People don't lean away, they lean in. Not because you demand it, but because your stillness invites curiosity. This presence is built when you stop scattering yourself. When your mind isn't half in the past, half in the future, half in imagined outcomes. When you're actually here, fully, calmly, unrushed. Wrote, confine yourself to the present. Most men don't. They're busy monitoring reactions, managing impressions, rehearsing what to say next. That inner noise leaks outward. Presence disappears the moment you're trying to get something. But when you're grounded in the moment, not needing it to turn into anything else, your energy condenses. It becomes felt. And that's when others unconsciously move closer, emotionally, mentally, energetically. You don't build this presence by adding more. You build it by subtracting, less explaining, less proving, less fidgeting with words, less rushing to fill silence. Silence, when you're centered, isn't awkward, it's dense. It carries weight. Seneca understood this when he said, "He who speaks less is listened to more." Not because fewer words are clever, but because restraint signals control. And control of self is rare. Rare things pull attention without effort. Here's the truth you need to hear clearly. Obsession isn't created by stimulation. It's created by contrast. When you are composed in a world of agitation, you become a point of rest. When you are steady in a world of emotional spikes, you feel different. And difference registers at a level deeper than logic. That's why presence works even when you say very little. Your nervous system sets the tone. Others attune to it before they realize what's happening. So your task is simple but not easy. You must train yourself to slow down internally, not externally as a performance but genuinely. Start by noticing how often you rush your own experience, how often you try to get to the next moment instead of inhabiting this one. Epictetus warned, "If you are not master of your thoughts, you are a slave." Presence begins when you reclaim ownership of your attention. Not tomorrow, now. A powerful habit to adopt is single-point focus. When you're doing one thing, do only that. No mental multitasking, no background commentary, just awareness. This trains your mind to stay put. Another exercise is deliberate pauses. Before you speak, pause for a breath, not to be dramatic, to arrive. That breath it reminds your body there's no threat, no chase, no urgency. Over time, this becomes your default rhythm, and people feel it. Presence also comes from emotional economy. You don't spend energy unnecessarily. You don't react to everything. You let things pass through you without sticking. Reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. When you embody that, your reactions soften. Your expressions simplify. You stop broadcasting volatility. And volatility is what repels. Calm draws people closer because it feels safe yet intriguing. Now let's be clear, this is not detachment as withdrawal. It's engagement without grasping. You're there, but you're not leaning forward. You're attentive, but not hungry. That balance is what creates tension in the best sense. When you don't rush to resolve moments, they stretch. When you don't rush to define things, curiosity grows. Obsession thrives in that space of unanswered presence. Practice this daily. Remove one unnecessary reaction, just one. When you feel the impulse to respond, immediately wait. Observe the sensation. Let it crest and fall. This builds emotional endurance. Another practice is stillness training. Sit quietly for 5 minutes and do nothing. No stimulation, no goal. Just observe. This strengthens your capacity to be with yourself. And the more comfortable you are with yourself, the less you need others to regulate you. That independence is felt instantly. You should also refine how you carry your attention. When you listen, listen fully. Not to reply, not to impress, just to absorb. Presence isn't about being interesting, it's about being interested without attachment. Seneca wrote, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." Stop being everywhere. Choose to be here, right now. That choice alone changes how you're perceived. Understand this. Obsession doesn't come from being chased. It comes from being encountered. When someone feels seen without being evaluated, heard without being consumed, they relax. And in that relaxation, attraction deepens. You become a place their mind returns to, not because you demanded it, but because your presence felt different from the noise they're used to. This is a discipline, a Stoic one. It requires daily attention, daily restraint, daily grounding, but the reward is profound. You stop performing, you stop forcing, you stop strategizing, and in that simplicity, something powerful emerges. As said, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. In this context, the best power is to be unlike the restless world around you. So start today. Slow your inner tempo, guard your attention, reduce your reactions, practice stillness. Let silence work. Let presence do what words cannot. You don't need to chase obsession. When you become fully present, it finds you quietly, steadily, and without resistance. You've made it to the end, and that already says something about you. Most men chase attention. You're learning how to command it without asking. The silent power you've just uncovered isn't about tricks, lines, or pretending to be someone else. It's about who you become when you no longer need approval. When you stop trying to impress, people start leaning in. When you're calm instead of reactive, curiosity replaces resistance. When you're grounded in yourself, attraction stops being something you pursue and starts being something that finds you. That's the paradox most never understand. Remember this: obsession isn't created by words. It's created by presence, by restraint, by the confidence of a man who knows his value and doesn't rush to prove it. If this video shifted even one perspective for you, don't let it end here. Rewatch it, apply it, sit with it. Let it change how you move, speak, and don't speak. And if you're ready to continue mastering this quiet edge, the kind that makes people feel something they can't explain, subscribe, stay with this channel, and keep walking this path. Because the strongest power is the one you don't announce.